I don't think women can be accused of sexism. It seems to be a crime of which only men can be guilty.
Charlton Heston is remembered today as one of Hollywood's towering figures, a man of granite presence, heroic stature, and uncompromising conviction. With a career spanning 5 decades and roles in films like Ben-Hur, El Cid, The Ten Commandments, and Planet of the Apes, Heston became the face of a certain kind of American myth-making. Stoic, principled, unshakable. So when modern clickbait headlines claim that Heston spent his final years compiling a list of the 6 most evil actors he ever worked with, the story spreads quickly. It sounds dramatic, scandalous, and perfectly engineered for virality. But there's just one problem. It isn't true. Not once in his diaries, interviews, letters, or biographies does Charlton Heston call any actor evil. What he did leave behind, however, were brutally honest journals, daily entries where he vented his frustrations, complained about colleagues, admitted mistakes, and offered sharp, unfiltered opinions about the people and productions around him. Heston never shied away from conflict, and those candid pages reveal the truth behind his most notable feuds. So today, instead of repeating a myth, we're exploring the real history. The 6 actual individuals who frustrated, infuriated, or clashed with Charlton Heston so intensely that modern readers may have mistaken his anger for something darker. Number 6. Marlon Brando. Charlton Heston and Marlon Brando never shared a screen, but that didn't stop Heston from forming an opinion. In fact, his thoughts on Brando appear not in public interviews or memoirs, but in the place where he was most unguarded, his private journals. These diaries, later published as The Actor's Life, Journals 1956 to 1976, reveal moments of jealousy, admiration, exasperation, and occasionally unfiltered irritation. And Brando earned one of the sharpest little barbs in them. The background is simple. In the mid-1960s, Heston was offered a role in Morituri, a World War II thriller starring Brando as a German anti-Nazi forced to infiltrate a freighter. Heston examined the script, weighed the project, and ultimately turned it down. But what makes the entry memorable is what followed. According to film historian Brian Hannon, Heston noted that not only did he reject the film, he also wryly commented that Brando should have passed too. This wasn't a public insult. It wasn't a press statement. It was a private diary remark that would never have seen daylight if Heston's journals hadn't been published decades later. But the line reveals something important. Heston had strong opinions about another actor's choices, and he wasn't afraid to express them, at least in private.
Wish to embarrass you, but really this kind of interrogation technique is...
But why Brando? At that time, Brando's career was in a strange transition. After the explosive brilliance of A Streetcar Named Desire and On the Waterfront, his 1960s filmography was uneven, marked by big paychecks, inconsistent scripts, and performances that alternated between inspired and indifferent. Heston, a disciplined craftsman who prided himself on professionalism, likely saw Brando as a cautionary tale, a gifted actor who was letting his talent drift. It's also possible Heston felt overshadowed. Brando was hailed as a revolutionary, a method actor whose emotional depth reshaped screen acting. Heston, by contrast, represented classical heroism, upright, commanding, larger than life. Their approaches could not have been more different. If Brando was the storm, Heston was the mountain. And in that era, the industry was beginning to shift toward Brando-style emotional turbulence, a shift Heston may have viewed with skepticism. Yet, even in his criticism, Heston's jab lacked true malice. It was mild, almost amused, the sort of wry comment one colleague might make over dinner. And importantly, he never attacked Brando's talent, only his choice of project. There is no record of Heston calling Brando evil, or even disliking him as a person. The remark is simply a snapshot of Heston's blunt honesty. Ironically, Morituri is now considered one of Brando's more underrated performances. But at the time, Heston saw a sinking ship, and in his private pages, he noted it. Number 5. Ava Gardner. Charlton Heston was a consummate professional Disciplined, prepared, punctual, and fiercely committed to the craft of acting. In his diaries, he often expressed frustration with co-stars who didn't share that same work ethic, and few pushed his patience further than Ava Gardner. Gardner was one of Hollywood's most glamorous stars. Magnetic, beautiful, and unpredictable. By the time she worked with Heston on 55 Days at Peking, 1963, she was already a legend.
I wanted to go to that thing with you, but you want to stay here and play soldier.
But legends come with reputations, and in Gardner's case, one of those reputations involved heavy drinking and emotional volatility. Heston's diaries record his dismay almost immediately. According to summaries in Factinate and various biographers, he wrote that Gardner was inebriated for most of the time they filmed together, making their already challenging production even more difficult. 55 Days at Peking was shot in Spain, on an enormous set built at great expense. Temperatures were high, the filming schedule was brutal, and tensions were almost guaranteed. Under those conditions, Heston needed a co-star who could match his discipline. Instead, he got Gardner, brilliant when she was on, but frequently late, sometimes incoherent, and occasionally unable to complete scenes. In one diary entry, he noted bluntly that he had no time for Ava Gardner, a phrase that carries both irritation and a hint of sadness. Heston wanted professionalism. Gardner was fighting her own demons. Their lack of chemistry was another source of frustration. Heston prided himself on creating emotional authenticity with his co-stars, even when he personally disliked them. With Gardner, he found that impossible. Their scenes felt hollow, disconnected, and forced. In his journals, he grouped her with Sophia Loren, another actress he struggled to connect with, saying he experienced zero chemistry with either of them, a rare admission from someone trained to manufacture chemistry on cue. And yet, despite his private irritation, Heston never publicly attacked Gardner. He didn't call her evil, cruel, or malicious. He simply saw her as unprofessional, unreliable, and tragically lost in her own turmoil. Gardner had been dealing with heartbreak, alcoholism, and career decline. Heston, for all his criticisms, seemed to understand that. His frustration wasn't moral judgment. It was emotional exhaustion. Their second collaboration, Earthquake, 1974, didn't improve matters. By then, Gardner was in an even more delicate state, and she clashed not only with Heston, but with the director, producers, and supporting cast. Again, Heston shouldered the burden of carrying their scenes, doing his job with as much grace as possible while keeping his real opinions confined to his diary. Looking back, their conflict reflects a larger clash between two Hollywood archetypes: the disciplined craftsman and the self-destructive star. Heston represented order, Gardner represented chaos. They were never going to meet in the middle. When you watch a film, can you sense when two actors simply don't connect? Or does great filmmaking hide that tension? Number 4. Sam Peckinpah. If Charlton Heston had a professional Achilles heel, it was this. He admired strong directors, but only if their strength was matched by clarity, discipline, and respect. Sam Peckinpah embodied strength, but he lacked the other qualities Heston depended on. And that combination turned Major Dundee, 1965, into one of the most infamous clashes of Heston's career.
You're Southern born, you knew what that meant. If he had killed me, and he had a chance.
Peckinpah was a visionary, a genius to some, a madman to others. His later films, The Wild Bunch, Straw Dogs, Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, became legendary for their violence, moral ambiguity, and raw human brutality. But during Major Dundee, Peckinpah was still an emerging director, burning with creative ambition and a dangerous disregard for rules. Columbia Pictures barely trusted him. Heston admired his talent but worried about his temperament. Those worries were justified. According to W. Burr and numerous Peckinpah biographies, Major Dundee was marred by heavy studio pairing and a vicious on-set feud between Heston and Peckinpah, a feud so intense that the studio eventually removed Peckinpah from the project. The trouble began almost immediately. Peckinpah wanted a darker, more morally complex film about a disgraced Union officer leading a troop of misfits on a doomed pursuit of Apache warriors. The studio wanted a traditional Western hero movie, Heston, stuck in the middle, tried to mediate. At first, Heston defended Peckinpah. He admired the director's ambition and even surrendered his entire salary, an extraordinary gesture, in an effort to keep Peckinpah on the project when Columbia threatened to fire him. But Peckinpah's erratic behavior made things worse, not better. He rewrote scenes daily, shouted at crew members, drank heavily, and demanded impossible stunts. Heston, a man who believed in preparation and precision, was appalled. Their arguments grew louder. At one point, Peckinpah accused Heston of undermining him. Heston, enraged, reportedly grabbed a prop sword and slammed it against a table to make his point. Not to threaten Peckinpah, but to shock him into focus. Peckinpah, equally stubborn, refused to back down. Their relationship crumbled. By the time Peckinpah was fired, both men were exhausted. Heston finished the film under a different director, and Peckinpah carried the bitterness for years. Yet, here again, the word evil never appears. Heston saw Peckinpah as brilliant but self-destructive, a man with enormous talent but no discipline. Do you think great films require harmony between actor and director, or can conflict actually make the final product stronger? Number 3. Gore Vidal. Few Hollywood arguments have spiraled into public spectacle quite like the one between Charlton Heston and Gore Vidal. Their clash wasn't over money, billing, or on-set behavior. It was something stranger, deeper, and increasingly personal as the years went on. And although Heston never labeled Vidal evil, their feud became one of the defining controversies surrounding Ben-Hur. To understand the conflict, we need to step back to 1959, when William Wyler was directing Ben-Hur, one of the most ambitious films MGM had ever attempted. The script went through multiple hands, including Gore Vidal's. Vidal contributed for only 2 weeks, but decades later he claimed that the emotional tension between Judah Ben-Hur, Heston, and Masala, Stephen Boyd, was written as a coded homosexual love story. It was a bold claim, especially in an era when Hollywood still avoided such themes. Vidal insisted that he shared the idea only with Boyd, and deliberately kept it secret from Heston because, as he put it, Heston would fall apart. According to Vidal, this subtext explained the intensity of the early scenes between the characters. Childhood friends meeting again as adults, separated by loyalty, politics, and betrayal. When these comments resurfaced in the 1990s documentary, The Celluloid Closet, they ignited a firestorm. Heston, who believed deeply in the integrity of Ben-Hur, reacted with fury. In a public letter quoted by Slash Film, he wrote that Vidal's claim insults William Wyler and, I have to say, irritates the hell out of me. To Heston, the idea that this monumental biblical epic had secretly contained a theme he viewed as out of step with its intended message felt like a deliberate provocation. He further argued that Vidal's contributions were minimal and that Wyler had rejected most of his pages. Wyler himself, who died in 1981, never confirmed Vidal's claim. Stephen Boyd also never spoke publicly about it. Critics and historians remain split. Some see the subtext, others do not. But regardless of interpretation, the damage was done. Vidal framed the story as evidence of his cleverness. Heston took it as an insult to his craft, his director, and perhaps even his dignity. What makes this feud fascinating is how long it lingered. Heston mentioned Vidal's absurd claim repeatedly in interviews, memoirs, and letters. Vidal, for his part, doubled down in later years, enjoying the mischief he caused. Their exchanges became less about the film and more about ego, pride, and legacy. Yet even in the heat of this argument, Heston never used words like evil. He called Vidal misguided, insulting, and dishonest, but never malevolent. Still, to modern audiences, reading his intense irritation, it's easy to see how someone could twist the story into a sensational myth. Do you think writers should publicly reinterpret their work decades later? Or does that undermine the audience's own experience of the story? Number 2. John Wayne. Charlton Heston and John Wayne were two towering American icons, men whose screen personas helped shape Hollywood's mythology of rugged masculinity. Both played warriors, cowboys, defenders of justice, and larger-than-life leaders. Their political views overlapped at times, diverged at others, but they shared something deeper, a sense of duty to their craft. And yet, for all the similarities, Heston refused to be directed by Wayne. The tension began with The Alamo, 1960, John Wayne's passion project.
Wouldn't it sound kind of silly, the two of us chattering Colonel, Colonel, Colonel like a couple of marsh-shield birds?
Wayne planned to direct, produce, and star in the film, pouring his own fortune into its creation. He needed strong co-stars, and he wanted Heston to play Jim Bowie, the legendary frontiersman whose final stand at the Alamo remains one of America's most mythic stories. Heston received the script. He considered the offer, and then he declined, firmly, unequivocally, and with reasons he would never fully articulate publicly. But later, he finally admitted one of those reasons in a quote preserved by Classic Movie Hub. Heston had several concerns about the project, and having John Wayne as director was one of them. Heston was a disciplined actor. He respected experienced directors, Wyler, DeMille, Anthony Mann. He believed in structure, preparation, and the authority of the director's chair. Wayne, though brilliant on screen, was still unproven behind the camera. To Heston, the idea of working under a director without significant experience was a professional risk. He wasn't willing to gamble his reputation. Wayne felt the rejection, deeply. Although he and Heston remained cordial, Wayne reportedly saw Heston's decision as a personal slight. Wayne was a man of intense pride, and the Alamo had become his life's mission. To be told no by another icon stung more than he expected. What makes the situation compelling is the unspoken contrast between their personalities. Heston, who valued discipline over bravado, saw potential chaos in Wayne's directorial inexperience. Wayne, full of passion and instinct, saw Heston's hesitation as arrogance. Two different philosophies of filmmaking collided before either man even reached the set. In truth, Heston didn't need Wayne. His career was thriving. And Wayne didn't need Heston. The Alamo became a major production without him. But the rift became part of Hollywood lore, a moment when two titans quietly stepped back from collaboration out of mutual caution and unspoken pride. Again, Heston never called Wayne evil. They simply weren't compatible in that moment, and Heston had the clarity to walk away. Have you ever turned down an opportunity because the leadership didn't inspire confidence, even if the project itself looked promising? Number 1. Sophia Loren. Of all the conflicts Charlton Heston recorded in his journals, none loomed as large or lasted as long as his feud with Sophia Loren during the filming of El Cid, 1961.
Oh, yes. He's been attacked by a madman. He's fallen ill.
It wasn't just a disagreement. It wasn't even a clash of personalities. To Heston, it became a symbolic struggle over respect, ego, and the hierarchy of stardom, something he cared about far more than he ever admitted publicly. Heston entered El Cid as Hollywood royalty. He had already starred in Ben-Hur, won an Oscar, and proven himself capable of anchoring enormous epics with physicality and gravitas. He saw El Cid as another heroic role, a chance to play Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar, a noble warrior of Spanish legend. To him, it was clear who the central figure of the story was, and it certainly wasn't Jimena, the character played by Sophia Loren. But to the producers, Loren was equally essential. She was Europe's most bankable star, a phenomenon in Italy, adored in France, admired across the continent. Her name attracted international financing. Her presence guaranteed foreign box office success. And her list of demands reflected that power. A $1 million salary, an Italian language version of the script, and even a personal hairdresser flown in from Rome. According to Far Out magazine and biographer Mark Elliott, Heston was infuriated. He believed her salary eclipsed his own star power, and he found her requests extravagant, unnecessary, and disrespectful toward the production. Heston, who had risen through disciplined hard work, had little patience for what he viewed as vanity. The tension escalated quickly. On set, Heston asked for a body double during close-ups that only featured Loren. If a scene didn't require both actors in frame, he preferred not to be present at all. Even during love scenes, moments designed to showcase emotional vulnerability, he avoided eye contact. In his diary, he later wrote that he was looking into the future rather than at Loren. It became a small scandal at the time. Technicians whispered about the frosty atmosphere. Extras sensed the chill between the two leads. Even director Anthony Mann struggled to navigate the tension, trying to coax passion and warmth from actors who barely wanted to acknowledge each other. What makes this feud so revealing is how much it mattered to Heston. He saw Loren not as a collaborator, but as a rival, someone who challenged his primacy in a genre where he felt unquestionably dominant. Loren, meanwhile, behaved like the reigning star she was. She had no reason to defer to him. Their chemistry, or lack thereof, became a battle of pride. And yet, on screen, El Cid remains one of the most visually arresting romances of its era. Their tension gives certain scenes an unexpected edge, as though both characters are wrestling with unspoken frustrations. Perhaps that is why the feud continues to fascinate film historians, because it didn't ruin the movie, it complicated it. Heston never called Loren evil, but she was the one co-star he never forgave. Have you ever had to work closely with someone whose personality clashed completely with yours? How did you handle it? The myth that Charlton Heston left behind a list of the 6 most evil actors he worked with is one of those internet inventions that spreads because it sounds dramatic, sensational, and a little wicked. But like many Hollywood legends, it dissolves the moment you examine it closely. Heston never used the word evil. He never created such a list. What he did leave behind was far more human. A trail of diaries and interviews full of frustration, admiration, stubbornness, and brutally honest opinions. In Loren, he saw a rival who challenged his sense of artistic primacy. In Wayne, he saw a director he could not trust. In Vidal, he saw a provocateur who weaponized interpretation. In Peckinpah, he saw brilliance clouded by chaos. In Gardner, he saw talent undermined by self-destruction. In Brando, he saw an actor whose choices baffled him. None of these people were evil. They were flawed, complicated human beings working in a volatile industry where ego, insecurity, pressure, and creative ambition collide every day. And Heston, disciplined, proud, at times rigid, reacted strongly to personalities that clashed with his own. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into truth versus myth. If you enjoyed exploring these behind-the-scenes stories, feel free to like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts. And before you go, here's one more question. Which of Heston's clashes do you think taught him the biggest lesson, and why?